Burundi's president claims an early victory in Monday's controversial parliamentary poll. Oscar-winning actress Lupita Nyong'o champions elephant conservation in Kenya. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is back and ready to terminate the box office competition. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. We begin tonight in Burundi, where President Pierre Nkurunziza is claiming an early victory in Monday's controversial parliamentary poll. The elections happened despite the opposition of domestic civic groups and calls by the international community to postpone it. Now, the European Union and the African Union say prevailing conditions in the country would make it impossible to hold a credible election. The African Union withheld its monitors in a gesture of denying the legitimacy of the election results. The United States says it is deeply disappointed in Burundi's decision to go through with the parliamentary elections despite calls for a delay. The Electoral Commission expects the results to be announced within 3 days. Now, for more on the situation in Burundi, VOA's Edward Rema joins us by phone from Bujumbura. Eddie, first tell us what makes Mr. Nkurunziza decide or at least declare that he has won this election.
Yes, Vincent, the reason he's declaring that he's the winner of the local and legislative elections is because he's the only person, or his party was the only one that took part in these elections. He may say that other parties also joined the elections, but the parties that also got into elections are parties that are allied to the ruling party after day. So it's not it's a no-brainer for him to say that he's won the elections.
And actually, that is the question. Does he have anything to celebrate here? The elections are being seen as not credible because nobody else participated. Is that of any concern to them at all, or anybody within the party?
Anybody within the party they don't seem to be concerned about it because that is what they wanted. They wanted the elections to take place despite calls from the international community, the African Union, European Union, despite the opposition boycotting the elections because they felt that the environment was not conducive enough for them to take part in the elections. So since they decided to go ahead with the elections, and now that they're saying that they have won the elections, it shows that it wasn't anything of a concern to them. So they're happy with the results. They're going to win with a landslide. But whether that landslide is going to be credible or not is something that we are all waiting to see.
Could this be a mirror of what is going to happen during the presidential elections? What are you hearing?
What we are hearing right now is something that we've been hearing all the time. There's still so much pressure, either within or outside Burundi, to have the elections postponed. There are some terms that were set by the heads of state of the East African community, which included opening up political space so that everybody could take place in the elections. There were calls to have all the refugees returned. There were calls to have all the media houses that were closed opened. None of that has been done. So whether the July 15th presidential elections are going to take place or not, it could be just the same way as these elections have happened. So we're waiting to see what is going to happen, whether the international community is going to increase the pressure, because right now when you talk to people here, they're saying that there could be also sanctions that may be imposed on Burundi, and that would be...
Eddie, thank you. We'll stay on this story, of course, until the elections. VOA's Edward Rema reporting live from Bujumbura by phone. Now, the perilous voyage for thousands of migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea to Europe is continuing with no let-up. Some 400 migrants arrived at the Sicilian port of Catania in the early Tuesday morning after being rescued at sea. They were brought in by a Norwegian vessel involved in the search and rescue operation. The Italian Coast Guard says over the last 2 days, at least 4,400 migrants have been plucked from the sea by 29 different vessels. About 60,000 migrants have arrived in Italy by boat from North Africa this year, and almost 2,000 have died. Italy has accused European Union governments of not pitching in enough to help manage the migrant flow, mainly from conflict zones in Africa and the Middle East. Well, on Monday, the Italian Navy began to recover the bodies of up to 800 migrants from a fishing boat which sank in the Mediterranean 3 months ago. A tragedy that prompted the European Union to expand its sea rescue operation. Well, Greek banks remain closed on Tuesday as the nation appears set to formally default on a $1.8 billion loan repayment to the International Monetary Fund. This is due today. However, there is a late word that Eurozone's top officials and 19 finance ministers will have a teleconference Tuesday evening to assess the latest proposals from Athens to keep the bailout negotiations going. Henry Ridgewell has more from London.
At ATMs across Athens, there are long lines to withdraw cash. The doors to the banks will remain firmly closed for the rest of the week. Capital controls were inevitable after the European Central Bank decided not to continue the liquidity lifeline it has been giving Greek banks, says economist Ioannis Kokoris of Queen Mary University of London.
Apparently banks have between 1 and 3 billion left. And only $1 billion went out on Friday, $1 billion on Saturday. So if they did not put any capital controls, banks would be completely empty.
Talks over a new deal to extend the €240 billion bailout broke up Saturday after Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras called a snap referendum on the EU bailout proposals for July 5th. The Greek government is urging citizens to back its stance and vote no.
We see the referendum as the continuation of negotiations through different means. The referendum is not a way for us to leave the euro.
But European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said Greeks would be voting on their membership in the European Union.
A no vote would mean, regardless of the question finally asked, that Greece had said no to Europe.
Early polls show a small majority in favour of agreeing to the deal offered by the EU. The next few days will be crucial, says Kokoris.
If we see any kind of social unrest, I think that will definitely swing the vote to a yes. If things remain calm with the banks, if the salaries are paid on time, if the pensions are paid on time, even to people who do not have an ATM card, then we still will be looking at a very close call.
Greeks must choose between further austerity with no end in sight or the unknown of leaving the euro currency, says Professor Dionysis Dimitrakopoulos.
What is currently on offer does not include what I think psychologically at least Greeks need and what the economy needs, which is a huge haircut. The country cannot repay the debts that it has.
Borrowing costs have all increased in recent days for other debt-laden economies in Europe, including Spain, Portugal and Italy.
Italy has had primary budgetary surpluses for many years, yet its debt has not gone down. So if I were Matteo Renzi, I would think, who comes after Greece?
Analysts say the risk of so-called contagion is lower than in previous years. US Treasury Secretary Jack Lew has urged Greece and its creditors to reach a broader deal and finalise details later. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, investors around the world are reacting to the Greek economic drama that continues to unfold. Africa 54's business correspondent Alexis Christoforos joins us now from New York with more details. And now, Alexis, what can investors expect this week from this Greek saga?
Well, Vincent, we are all waiting now around the world, investors around the world, waiting for the outcome of that teleconference that Euro finance ministers are going to hold in just about a half hour from now. As we know, Greece has asked for a new bailout program from the Euro region just hours before its existing aid agreement expires. This would be Greece's third bailout in just 5 years. However, this proposal does not include any of the economic reform measures that European negotiators have been looking for months now. The Greek finance minister has said his government will not make a $1.8 billion payment to the International Monetary Fund today. But of course, the Greek government is still hoping for a last-minute deal with creditors. Banks in Greece and the Athens Stock Exchange are closed for a second day. They will remain closed for the rest of the week as the country tries to stop a flood of money from exiting the country. World markets are closing the books on the second quarter today. U.S. stocks have actually bounced back after their biggest sell-off of the year on hopes Greece and its lenders will find a last-minute deal to avert a default. European stocks suffered their worst quarter in 3 years, while the euro just capped its best quarterly gain against the dollar since 2011. Investors, of course, also looking ahead to a vote this weekend in Greece on whether the country will accept more austerity measures in exchange for further aid. If Greeks vote no, analysts say it will put the country one giant step closer to exiting the Eurozone. Vince?
And now we know everybody's holding their breath. But indeed, if Greece ends up leaving the Eurozone, what is the greater implication for the world economy? And in this case, if we can also focus on Africa.
Sure. Well, the contagion from Greece should be contained because many private and institutional investors have already limited their exposure to Greece. So that should prevent heavy losses for investors in Europe, Africa, and Asia. The currency markets have been taking a hit, though. The South African rand fell more than 1% against the dollar on news of the Greek turmoil. But some analysts believe a Greek exit from the Eurozone may actually represent opportunities for African investors in Europe. The European Central Bank, let's remember, is also a lot stronger than it was just a few years ago, and economists say it can withstand a Greek exit from the Eurozone. Many investors remain optimistic Greece can eventually strike a deal to avoid a messy exit from the Eurozone. But even if the country returns to the drachma, many are banking that the fallout can be largely contained to Greece. And economists, of course, continue to point out that Greece is an extremely small economy. What investors fear here is the domino effect. It's not just about Greece, but about the whole concept of political and economic integration across the entire European continent. So this really throws into question the viability of the Eurozone. And Vincent, some are already betting on the next member country to falter. Portugal, Spain, and Italy have all had differing degrees of fiscal turmoil. Vincent?
What a drama. Alexis, thank you very much. Well, that is Africa 54 business correspondent Alexis Christophorous reporting live from New York. U.S. President Barack Obama has signed into law 2 hard-fought bills giving him greater authority to negotiate international trade deals and provide aid to workers whose jobs are displaced by such pacts. Now, the president signed the measure during a ceremony Monday at the White House where he hailed the bipartisan cooperation that was needed to get the legislation through Congress after an intense lobbying campaign that pitted Mr. Obama against congressional Democrats, environmentalists, and labor unions.
But I would not be doing this, I would not be signing these bills if I was not absolutely convinced that these pieces of legislation are ultimately good for American workers. I would not be signing them if I wasn't convinced they'd be good for American businesses. I would not be signing them if I did not know that they will give us a competitive edge in this new economy.
Mr. Obama also signed a measure that provides $450 million to retrain workers who lost their jobs because of expanded trade and extends trade preferences for another decade to sub-Saharan Africa. The Trade Promotion Authority legislation, also known as Fast Track, is expected to speed the completion of Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations with 11 other Pacific Rim nations in the coming weeks. Well, despite improving security, Somalia remains one of the most dangerous countries to be a journalist, even more so for someone who cannot see. Abdulaziz Bello has the story of a journalist who has been reporting from the Somali capital for the last decade despite being blind.
dhowaan uu soo saaray guddiga maaliyadda ee baarlamaanka Abdel Fattah Hassan, a visually impaired reporter, has defied the odds in a country ranked among the deadliest for journalists. He works at one of Mogadishu's leading radio stations. His friends and colleagues call him Kalgal.
I had an eye illness at a very young age, but I couldn't get proper medical treatment due to the situation in Somalia. After the civil war started, I lost all hope of ever seeing again and had no medical support.
Despite the massive challenges, Kalgal persevered and now works at Gobjok radio station as its senior reporter covering the Somali parliament. He also has a weekly program for handicapped people called The State of the Disabled. The live call-in show is popular, focusing on empowering the disabled by educating them on their basic rights.
I hope to use my position in the media to be a voice of the people and improve the humanitarian situation.
He hopes his message will resonate beyond Somalia's borders. Speaking 2 years ago at a technology, entertainment and design event, a global non-profit group to promote cultural understanding, Kalgal described his journey from being born to a poor family in southern Somalia to becoming a husband, a father and journalist despite his visual impairment. He says many people advised him against pursuing such a dangerous career, but he says it was his childhood dream and being sightless doesn't make him any more or any less vulnerable than other journalists. The key, he said, to overcoming his challenges was a belief in himself, the support of his friends and family, and bosses willing to employ him for his skills and overlook his disability. Abdulaziz Bilo for VOA News, Mogadishu.
A truly amazing guy. Want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered? Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a possible breakthrough in the detection of pancreatic cancer. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, it's time now for our Tuesday Health Report, and joining us is Africa 54 Health correspondent Lino Madu with a look at cholera in Burundi and a flare-up of Ebola. Lino.
Hello, Vincent. The corpse of a 17-year-old Liberian has tested positive for the Ebola virus, Liberia's first reported case since the country was declared Ebola-free on May 9th. Liberia's Deputy Health Minister Tolbert Nyanswa stressed on Tuesday that there is no need to panic. He says the victim has been safely buried and the team tracing the victim's contacts has already begun work. The Associated Press reports the 17-year-old male died on June 24th in Margibi County, far from the borders of Guinea and Sierra Leone, the two other nations hardest hit by the virus. Now scientists believe they are close to a blood test for pancreatic cancer, one of the hardest tumors to detect and treat. The test, which they describe as a major advance, hunts for tiny spheres of fat that are shed by the cancers. Early results are published in the journal Nature showed the test was 100% accurate. Experts say the findings were striking and ingenious, but required refinement before they could become a cancer test. Pancreatic cancer presents a few symptoms in its early stages. By the time people become unwell, the cancer has often spread around the body and become virtually untreatable. Now, the World Health Organization says the insecticide linden causes cancer in humans. Linden is an ingredient in some head lice and scabies treatments used in some countries, including China and India. A specialist panel of the International Agency for Research on Cancer found sufficient evidence to link the chemical to a cancer called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The evidence on linden and cancer was largely based on studies among agricultural workers that showed a consistent, approximately 50% increase in risk. Linden is already banned in the European Union and the United States. Cholera is raging across the border in Tanzania to Burundian refugees. Refugees have fled to the neighboring country due to rising insecurity and political violence in Burundi. Repeated displacements and migrations across the border has set off a cholera outbreak in Nyanza Lake. Health experts say overcrowding and widespread unsanitary conditions have contributed to the outbreak. However, they say thanks to a quick and experienced response by local health officials, as well as health workers who stepped up cholera awareness, and with support from UNICEF, the outbreak was quickly stemmed. For the first time, local health officials, supported by UNICEF, employed SMS technology to track and monitor new cholera cases in real time. Dr. Dorothée Ntakirutimana is a UNICEF health officer.
UNICEF had just supported the Ministry of Public Health and fight against AIDS around the introduction of an innovative rapid pro system for monitoring and real-time reporting of cholera cases. It was before the outbreak, but the epidemic served as a practical example, and cases in Nyanza Lake were fed regularly and in real time into the database. But it is also used for monitoring patients, including those discharged from the treatment center.
And observers say the number of cholera cases remain relatively low. However, the situation remains critical. Now, refugee children from Burundi under 5 are at risk of malnutrition. More than a month after the first influx of refugees to Tanzania's northwestern Kigoma region, children under 5 are requiring urgent humanitarian support. Over 55,000 refugees fled to Tanzania due to the volatile situation in Burundi. Over 60% of the refugee population in Nyarugusu camp are children. About 14,000 children have been screened for malnutrition. Those who were identified with severe acute malnutrition are receiving appropriate nutrition therapy and therapeutic care to help rehabilitate them. UNICEF and the Tanzania Red Cross both support the screening of malnutrition for all children under age 5.
My children started getting sick when we reached Kagunga. We stayed there for a whole week. The living conditions were bad. We had nothing to eat. We were exposed to disease. My daughter suffered from severe diarrhea.
And health experts say protecting the nutritional status of vulnerable populations affected in emergencies is essential to prevent acute malnutrition, diseases, and death. And that's our Africa Health Report for today. Vincent?
Well, thank you very much. Be sure to watch the Nomadu's Health Reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Now, Oscar-winning actress Lupita Nyong'o has returned home to Kenya to spearhead a new campaign to stop the record slaughter of elephants for their valuable ivory. The 32-year-old actress, who won an Oscar for her portrayal of the slave girl Patsy in 12 Years a Slave, will appear in Star Wars Episode 7 later this year. Now, she says her visit Tuesday to a national park and elephant orphanage in Kenya has been life-changing. Nyong'o has signed up as an ambassador for conservation organization Wild Aid, which engages celebrities to spread awareness of poaching and wildlife crime. Nyong'o says she hopes her involvement will help save Africa's elephants for future generations.
With the current rate of killing, we may lose elephants in West and Central Africa in the next decade. And ours in East Africa may follow if we do not turn things around. Please join me in putting your love for this beautiful, gentle animal into sustainable action. Let's all begin today and come together to learn more, know more, and do more to save the elephants.
Nyong'o will appear in advertisements and public service announcements to raise awareness of the threat to African elephants. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Arnold is back, prepared to be terminated. We'll be right back.
Know they're making a Top Gun too?
Yeah.
This is the face only a tourist could love. These tree-hugging marsupials are why thousands of visitors flock every year to Cape Otway. He's so cute. And while the species is listed as threatened, Victoria State is trying to decrease their numbers. Environmental official Mandy Watson says there's just not enough food for them.
Sustainable density is thought to be about 1 per hectare, and what we're observing on the ground is about 3 to 4 as a minimum, and up to about 20.
Last year, it was revealed that Victoria State euthanized about 700 koalas because of overpopulation. But Deborah Talbert of the Australia Koala Foundation says that's not the answer.
They're not prepared to even take the time to plant some trees. It's not too many koalas, there's just too few trees.
Victoria State officials have a new plan to control koala populations now. They are outfitting females with contraceptive implants. Relocation of some of the koalas is also a possibility. I'm VOA's Rebecca Ward for Greenbeat.
And welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what is trending. Top-seeded tennis champ Novak Djokovic created quite the stir on social media last week for a crushing serve or record volley, but for an amazing catch. Djokovic entertained the modest crowd between points at the Budos exhibition match in Stoke Park, England, by kicking a tennis ball high into the air and catching it in his shorts pocket. Video of his stunt went viral, of course. The number 1 seed went on to beat his opponent in 3 sets. Next up to Los Angeles, where Arnold Schwarzenegger and the cast and crew of Terminator Genesis celebrated the U.S. release of the 5th entry into the action franchise. The movie is the first new installment of the series since 2009 and the first to feature Schwarzenegger since 2003. The Governor says slipping back into the title role was like riding a bicycle. Schwarzenegger said he'd seriously consider an invitation for another turn as the Terminator, as long as there's clearly a demand. Terminator Genesis will be open on screens worldwide by end of July. And finally, if it weren't for the famous skyline, this Dubai resort could be one of many luxury destinations around the world. Despite strict rules regarding eating and drinking during daylight hours, tourists still visit to take advantage of cheaper prices. In some hotels, visitors are able to avoid certain rules, meaning food and soft drinks are served throughout the day and swimwear is permitted. But beware, strict rules still apply to how people dress on streets or in shopping malls during daytime hours. Non-Muslims or adult Muslims who eat in public during the day can be fined or even jailed. And that is what is trending today, Vincent.
And that's our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
What is The Scoop? It's real talk, real issues, the real Africa. That's The Scoop with Salim Amin. Meet the latest game changers in Africa. Learn who inspires and leads. Entrepreneurs and trailblazers and people making a difference in Africans' lives. Monday through Friday on VOA. Find your time zone and get The Scoop.
We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54.
In a lively half hour, news, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.